Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is time, episode 40 of Baschamania. Today we have NCAA champion, three-time All-American, and associate head coach at Wisconsin, John Reeder, on the show. I could give a lengthy introduction for who John is and what he accomplished and why he's so important, but I just want to dive right into today's conversation. So if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube, Anchor, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you do listen on Apple, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. But with all that said, let's just roll his intro and get this show started.
It's Baschamania! Let me tell you something, brother. He gave us everything he had in him tonight. What you gonna do when Baschamania runs wild on? Oh, it's gonna be a good one. And business just picked up here on the podcast. Oh, yeah.
Mr. John Reeder, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, Justin. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, man. I'm so pumped to dive into this conversation. So I think the best place to start this conversation is that, as I say on the show often, I was an absolutely terrible high school wrestler. And after high school, I didn't really follow wrestling for a couple of years. I actually kind of honestly got into a dark place, and I worked myself out of that. And a few years later, I started getting things back in order again. And around that same time, I started watching wrestling again. And of course, as the casual fan does, I watched NCAAs. As I was watching NCAAs, at the same time I'm launching a marketing company in 2007, 2008, I was watching Cael Sanderson and listening to them and talk about him and realizing that he just wasn't marketing himself the way that I thought he should. So I reached out to him, and lo and behold, Cael Sanderson became one of my first clients.
All right.
And when he was coaching you, I became a fan of you because, hey, I'm a Cael guy, and you're somebody Cael was coaching. So it was fun. I remember rooting for you back, when you were competing in college and starting to follow you then. So I'm pumped to have this conversation. I guess we'll start right away with, what was it like going through college where, I want to kind of talk about a little bit when you were younger, but I'm so curious what it was like. You got to be one of the only few people who was coached by Cael, wrestled and competed against Cael, and now you're coaching against him on the D1 Big Ten level. What has your relationship been like with Cael over these years?
Oh, it's been amazing. It all started when he first started recruiting me. I graduated high school at Davidson High School in 2006. Coach started recruiting me in 2005, and it started right there. I mean, right from the get-go, I knew Coach Sanderson was a guy I wanted to wrestle for. It was just a genuine relationship right from the very get-go. He did a great job of building that relationship, and if you know me, I'm a relationship guy. I've got to trust you before I can fight for you.
Yep.
And he did a great job, and it's been the same way through our entire relationship. I still keep in contact with Coach, and it's been great from a professional standpoint. Now being on the other side of the mat as coach, it's the same, right? We're still talking to each other. It's a great relationship, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
And you seem very, it's funny watching the Penn State Wisconsin duel. You saw afterwards everybody shaking hands, and I think he gave you like a bear hug. Like you could see the mutual admiration there between you guys. And going back to when you were recruited by him, you were a really good wrestler throughout your youth and high school career. You were a 3-time state champion. I'm curious, what do you think led to your success early on?
You know what? I think the success early on was just the mentors I had in my life right from the very get-go. And from my youth, it was my parents right up to the opportunities they gave me to be surrounded by my youth coaches and my high school coaches, and they just kept directing me the right way. And I think their influence and their mentorship, that's what made the difference. They kept putting me around the right people, and it eventually led to the opportunity to wrestle for Coach Sanderson. And it was a seamless transition into college because I was used to that. I was used to that lifestyle of, hustle, effort, and attitude, and doing whatever it takes to be the best version of yourself, and just doing everything right in your life. So I had that from the jump, and Coach Sanderson, that's what he's all about. So I got along with him right away, and it was a great experience with him.
And you talk about him recruiting you. what do you think it was in you that Cael liked from a recruiting standpoint? Because I'm curious, I guess we'll talk about it in a few minutes when we talk about you being a coach now, but being on that side of the recruit, what was it that you tried to sell Cael on of why he should recruit you, and what do you think Cael saw in you initially?
You know what? I don't think I necessarily was reaching out to anybody. I was always at every single tournament. My parents gave us the opportunity. They put our future in front of their own, if you get what I mean. Like every
Sure.
weekend we were at a tournament, or it was our opportunities before their own, right? And we were at every national tournament. So I think I was at every tournament, so I was always being seen by somebody, right? And I think just a willingness to compete and just chasing down, the aggressive style. I think that was what made me good, and coming up, and I just needed to be directed the right way. And if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think he's a phenomenal coach. He was a great mentor to me. He led me to a lot of great assistant coaches that were around him. And if you look at his blueprint, he is the guy who is doing, for a collegiate coach, he is the guy, and he's doing it right now. Everybody's trying to be like Penn State. So he's doing it right. And, I wouldn't change my experience for the world.
And it's funny, too, because this conversation can go in 37 different directions. When I was trying to organize it, it's like there's so many different little one-offs I have, like questions I have from different things. But, I guess we'll go in two different directions. The first being, it's interesting if you look at your career that you posted both an undefeated senior year in high school and in college. And I'm curious what led you, in your opinion, what led you to be able to have such dominant success in that way?
I think, I was just determined. I was willing to do whatever it took to be at the top, and in every which way of my life, whether it was, just putting my head down and working harder. I was a guy that was willing. And now being on the other side of being an athlete, now a coach, I think it comes down to, I can teach you, I can show you, I can hold your hand all day long. But if you're not willing to do whatever it takes to be the best version of yourself, it's going to be a long road. It's going to be hard. I was always that guy that would do whatever it took. I wasn't the most athletic guy by any means, but I was willing to do whatever it took. And I think Coach Sanderson saw that in me. And he ran with it, right? He needed to, polish, the rough edges and keep me in a box, but it eventually led to me accomplishing, the goals that we set out to win a national title, and it eventually came to fruition.
And this is a complete different direction too, but, it's one of those things that, again, as I was kind of listening to different interviews you've done, and I always try to listen to as much as I can to really pull out as much as I can for everybody listening. And, I listened to an interview you gave after, you did the Dave Schultz tournament in 2017. And I remember your gratitude put on display. And it was almost like you had that, what people know now is like that Penn State type of response, like that gratitude. Like, I think you said 3 times in 3 minutes, like, listen, anytime I get a chance to wrestle here on U.S. soil, I'm pumped, I'm grateful. You have that proper perspective. Was that something you had early on? Was that something Cael contributed to? Like, what was it for you that got you to that place? Like, you can tell you have such gratitude in being in your athletic career, in your coaching career. What do you think led to that, all that perspective being so locked on?
I think no doubt about it, Coach Sanderson and his staff, they preach to that to us every day, right? They were always saying, you got to be grateful for the opportunity to step out there and to be able to glorify God and do and showcase your skills and be able to compete, right? Because you never know which day is going to be your last one, and your career goes very fast, and you don't ever want to look back and have any regrets. So I was always grateful, and anytime I had the opportunity to compete, I was always looking to have fun, right? And that was something that, if I look back on my career, Coach Sanderson never made it. He never made it where it was like, it was like, it wasn't fun. It was always fun for us. It was always stress-free. It was always just, let's go out there and have a good time and compete to the best of our ability. And I promise you, I've trained you guys the right way, and I've shown you the right way to win, and just go out there and do what do what you've been taught.
And, only because we're talking with the Dave Schultz, and I just brought this up with a few different guys in the podcast, NCAA's wrestling in general is funny, but NCAA's is funny too. And, we're getting to that time of year where, Big Tens is this weekend, and then NCAA's, and there's so much attention on athletes. And, NCAA's usually 20, 30,000 people. This year it could be upwards of 40. And you see the guys, I think one of the most March-esque photos there is when it comes to wrestling is you with the head wrap on, bloody, head wrap, blood coming through everywhere. And that kind of defines the March picture. And I don't think what's clear about that is a couple months later, most wrestlers are in tournaments where they're in gyms like the Bill Farrell or the Dave Schultz, where the attention goes from every casual fan in the country to diehards and maybe 1,000 people watching. What was it like after you graduated from college and you started to go on the international scene, wrestling and not having that spotlight on? Was it, I'm curious if your gratitude and your passion is what kind of made you continue, because you see a lot of guys now, they want to go the MMA route. They want the attention. They want that spotlight that hey, I want to put on in front of a big crowd. And with wrestling, it's almost the opposite. You go from NCAAs, and then it's kind of down from there. Smaller gyms. You really got to have that passion and gratitude. And I'm curious what that switch was like from being on that big stage of NCAAs to some of those smaller tournaments, overseas tournaments. What was that like?
You know what? I completely agree. The times is from the moment you graduate, it's almost it's a complete change, right? The senior level circuit, at least when I was on the circuit, I know there's a lot more opportunities now, but you weren't going through that college grind. You weren't going through, every week you weren't competing. The spotlight, some of the tournaments were, overseas and, smaller gyms, smaller crowds. But I'll tell you what, there is no greater feeling than putting on that American flag on the back of your singlet with your name on it, and you're going over there with all your American buddies, and you're going and competing against other countries. There is no greater feeling, right? I promise you that. Once you felt that and put those straps up and go and compete against a foreign country, there's nothing better, man. There really is nothing better. But you do miss those large crowds, right? You do miss those large crowds. And I understand why these guys like to go in MMA. They want that bigger draw. But I think USA Wrestling has come so far in just the last 10 years since I've been competing. I mean, they've done a fantastic job. USA Wrestling is starting to build these events bigger and better, and USA Wrestling is at an all-time high. I mean, look at the names and look at the medals we're bringing home to the USA. It's a great time for USA Wrestling.
It's an amazing time. Even I'm kind of ingrained now with the podcast, my marketing company, and everything I'm involved in. But this is the first year. I think I got travel 4 out of 5 weekends between Big Tens, NCAA's, Last Chance, Olympic trials. It is at a different level now. And I'm curious, throughout your senior level career, I'm curious, over the last decade, what changes you think you've seen in the sport?
Ooh, you know what? I think they've done a better job of building the excitement around athletes. I think that the social media, the day and age we're in now in social media, it wasn't as big 10 years ago. And even 10 years ago, even 20 years ago, can you imagine the names that would be even more legendary just because of the social media presence 20 years ago, right? You got guys that were legends that kind of got lost, just because of there was no access. The general fan didn't get that build up to a certain guy. Just take an example like Chris Bono, right? He's a well-known name now, but could you imagine when he was competing for world teams and Olympic trials and whatever? Could you imagine how big his name really could have potentially have been, right? You think about that, but I think now, just in the last 10 years, it's exploded, right? You've really been able to see the personality in individuals. You've been able to let them be their own person. And I think it's amazing. I love seeing these guys have their own personalities, and it's fun. It's fun to see.
And, you talk about this last decade, and you have seen, over the last decade, you went from graduating and winning a national championship to competing on the world level and making world teams and competing in Olympic trials. And I'm curious, during that transition, I guess the first stop really is, what has your relationship been with Bono throughout that time? Because I think a lot of people are starting to pay more and more attention to the sport, and like you said, and I don't think people realize how far back your relationship with Coach Bono goes. What is that relationship like, and where does that start?
You know what? It started in 2005. So Coach Bono actually was on as an assistant coach to Bobby Douglas. Bobby Douglas was the head coach when I was getting recruited by Cael and Coach Douglas and Coach Bono. So he actually had reached out to me as well when he was on staff at Iowa State in 2005. So it started there, right? I knew of him. I used to see him in magazines, watch him wrestle as a kid. But fast forward, we kind of reconnected my junior year when Coach Sanderson went to Penn State. Kevin Jackson came in as the head coach at Iowa State my junior year. And he brought in Coach Bono as his top assistant my junior year. And then we reconnected, and it was instantaneous. We are so much alike. It's crazy. We're just, everything about him. I'm attracted to his mentality of the way he approaches his daily lifestyle. You want to talk about a guy who's fired up about life, who wants to be the best version of himself. He's just a good mentor. And every time, every situation I've been in, he's always been there for me. Right. And we're big on loyalty. I'm a big guy on loyalty, and, I've been loyal to the day for him, and he's been the same for me. And I couldn't ask him for anything else. So it's been good.
He coached you throughout your international career, right?
Right. So he got, I went to the Olympic Training Center after I graduated college in 2011. I spent 2 years there. Right. So I was kind of in this phase where I was like, I needed a little bit of a change from what I was doing. I wanted to have a little bit more focus on just strictly freestyle and be able to, travel the world and really dedicate myself. And that's what I told myself. When I left Iowa State, I said, listen, if I'm going to really make a run at this, I want to engulf myself completely into freestyle wrestling, put myself around the top people you could possibly be around, the best nutritionists, the best strength coaches. And at the time, I truly thought that was the Olympic Training Center. So I spent my 2 years there and had a great experience. Didn't accomplish my goals, but at the end of, I think it was World Team Trials in 2013, I believe, I fell short of making the World Team, and Coach Bono reached out to me, and, we picked up right away again. And we had talked, over the last couple of years when I was at the Olympic Training Center. He was always checking in, making sure I was doing okay and getting whatever I needed. But he got a job at South Dakota State. And he reached out and said, listen, I got a position for you. At least come out and check it out. And I had no idea. I'm like, where is South Dakota? Where is Brookings, South Dakota, man? What,
right.
I'm like, why do I want to be there? But you know what, Coach? I will take a trip just because I love you and I have a ton of respect for you. And, I flew out there and I fell in love with the vision of what he had for that program and just the energy behind his passion to make that program relevant again and to bring it to where it was a national powerhouse by the end of year 5 or 6 when we were there. It was phenomenal. So everything he touches is gold, really.
And, it's funny because one of the things I always do too, like when I'm preparing to have somebody on here, is I try to really watch old matches and go through different things. And I saw, even it's funny. I guess we can talk about it for a minute, but you kind of made it you said it's not a comeback because you were training, but you kind of made a comeback on the competition side in 2017 and when 79 kilos got introduced. And in that interview, I think it was with USA Wrestling through Dave Schultz, you were talking about how you felt kind of sluggish and kind of slow and bulky at 86. And then I watched the match with you and Ed Ruth where you guys put up 42 points, which is not normal, right? 42 points in a match is just
nuts. Ed was an animal, man. He could score from anywhere, and it was always fun wrestling him. He's a great he was a great opponent and a great friend, and man, was he tough.
And I'm curious because, from the fan perspective, I'm hearing you say, yeah, 86 kilos I wasn't really comfortable in as you're scoring 18 points, right? And it's like, at the same time, I'm curious because being a high-level athlete takes so much self-awareness. And I think one thing I'm always curious about is, what was that transition like from athlete to coach? Both first, competing while coaching a bit, and then at some point saying, all right, I'm just going to coach full-time. What was that transition like, and what kind of self-awareness process did that take for you to realize, like, hey, I'm done competing, I want to just coach now?
You know what? It was hard. I'll be honest, Justin. It was hard, and I had a lot of support. I still do, and I think anybody will be kidding you if they think that you're ever going to leave those thoughts of, man, I wish I was still competing, or I think I can still do it, or whatever. I think you're going to have that for the rest of your life. But I think it came to a point in my life where I was like, you know what? I don't want to be second, third, fourth. I mean, if I keep getting the same results, I want to be the guy on the team, right? And yeah, I'd gotten third, fourth multiple times, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to direct all of my attention in one area, and it's going to be to help these guys accomplish their goals and their dreams of being national champs and eventually, graduating and being world and Olympic champions. That day was hard. It certainly was, and I remember it like it was yesterday, having that conversation with Coach Bono. He was the first guy I told, and it was hard, but he completely understood, and he's always been there 100%. I think it's something you got to swallow, and you got to be real with yourself, right? You got to have a real conversation and say, listen, what are your priorities? Where what are you doing, right? Are you going to keep getting third and fourth? Is that what you want to do? And I had just had our first child. So I was like, you know what, let's get serious here and focus on coaching.
And did you see a difference with how you approached coaching once you were full-time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you know me, I'm 100% committed in every area that I truly believe in. And I believed in those guys, but I also believed in my own career. So it was like I was splitting time. It was like I was almost cheating. Yeah. If I wasn't going 100% here, I was not doing absolutely everything in my mind to help those guys. And then you're losing sleep at night because you're like, you know what? I didn't do everything I could possibly do to help this guy. Right. Or, hey, I didn't do every workout I was supposed to do because I should have been here. But at the end of the day, I was given the opportunity to be able to do that, and not a lot of not a lot of athletes are able to be able to be given an opportunity to split the time like that. Coach Bono was from the get-go. He said, listen, your job is to come in here, you're going to help me coach, but I want you to accomplish your goals. I'm going to live through you now. I'm going to travel the world with you now. If you got to go over to Turkey and compete, I'm coming with you. So it was never like, hey, you got to be here. Right. When you could be there. You know what I mean? So I fully am very grateful for that opportunity that he gave me, and the administration at South Dakota State was very, very open. If I needed to go compete overseas, they were 100% behind me.
And you kind of answered it, but I'm curious, once you made that transition and you're coaching now full time, what do you think you started enjoying the most about it?
You know what? I love the process. Because I enjoyed it myself. I loved seeing, coming into preseason where your body was at, and then, right before November when you're competing, and then, the ups and the downs, and then it leads into the postseason, and that's the competitor's playground. That's where you want to be at. Like, it's just like Seth Gross, right? I use him as an example all the time. You can see this guy. He's just ramped it up 10 notches because it's championship season now, and you can see it. He's an ultra-focused guy, but it becomes even tighter. Everything comes even tighter. You triple down in every area of your life, and that's what I love to see. I like to see those guys that are willing to do whatever it takes to be like that. But certainly, there's a lot of areas that are enjoyable, and college coaching's fun. It's really fun to see a kid come in as a freshman and the development they have, not only as an athlete, but just as a man. They're going to leave, hopefully, from the University of Wisconsin with one heck of a degree, but they're going to be ready to be a great father and a great citizen in the community.
And, it's funny, too, like, I so appreciate, I used to not kind of understand it, but, when Cael moved to Penn State, That's when him and I began a really good friendship, and he kind of treated me like I was an alumni of the program. When I came in, he'd introduce me to the guys before practice, and over the years, he made me feel like I was a Penn State guy, even though I didn't go there. And I'm curious, when you go from competing at a college, and I can't imagine the sense of pride you have for going to Iowa State, winning a championship, being all in, and then you go to a different school. You go to Wisconsin to coach. And you can tell, like, you're all in. You've drank the Wisconsin Kool-Aid. You're 100% a Badger. What was that like? Did that happen kind of instantly, or did that take time to adjust to that?
No, I think it happened instantly. It may be different for some individuals, but it was definitely instantly for me. Being around people that want to win, all right, and it's okay to say it. They say it all the time. We're in the business of winning, and we're going to do it the right way, but University of Wisconsin's in the business of winning, and I love that, man. I love being around people that want to win, and being around high-level people. But absolutely, it's just like you said with Coach Sanderson. As soon as you got to Penn State, you got to turn the page, and now you're an Indy Lion, and you move forward, and you both feet are in the door.
Yeah, and it's such a fun thing to watch. I admire it so much when I see somebody going into a school, and you are walking into a school where it's a Big Ten D1 program. Not everybody gets those opportunities, even NCAA champions, even like you were a 3-time All-American. Not everybody gets that opportunity to be involved in coaching at such a program. What was it like to get to Wisconsin, being in the Big Ten, knowing that you and Bono can continue that that sense of pride and urgency that you guys had at SDSU? Like, you set out to create something, and now you get to do this at Wisconsin. What was that like when you guys went over there?
Oh, like it was unbelievable, right? We had done something special at South Dakota State at a smaller university. You jump to a big time program in University of Wisconsin, like you said, Big Ten conference. That W goes worldwide, right? So being involved with something so much bigger than what you've been used to. And this is what we had always told ourselves, listen, this is why you're in college athletics, to have the opportunity. There's not too many universities in the country that have the opportunity to be national champions. The University of Wisconsin has that, right? They have that. They can recruit worldwide. They can recruit in anybody's house. And they have the resources, and they have one heck of a academics at the University of Wisconsin. So when Coach Bono got the phone call, very, very grateful. We have some of the best administration, and that's what makes a difference, right? When you got administration that are willing to do whatever it takes and to give you the opportunity to make it your program and say, listen, I see your vision. You guys want to be the best in the country. You guys want to, you don't want to compete for national titles, and we're 100% behind you. So you got guys like Chris McIntosh and Barry Alvarez, who's one of the most influential guys in college athletics as our athletic director, right? You got Chris McIntosh, who's his second man, his right-hand man, who played in the NFL, so he gets that competitor mindset.
Sure.
Doug T. The list goes on and on and on. But being around people that have been at a high level in their own athletic careers, I think that also makes a big difference too, because they kind of understand. They understand the athletic side of things as well, not just the nitty gritty paperwork stuff. But given the opportunity to be at Wisconsin, man, we couldn't be more grateful.
And you mentioned recruiting, and I'm curious, what has it been like for that, to be able to enter that recruiting age where I know Coach Bono talks about all the time the importance of recruiting, and as soon as he gets to a program like Wisconsin, you got to hit the ground running and start recruiting. What has it been like for you in that recruiting process of being on the other end of it? And I'm curious, too, for young listeners who might be listening now, what do you look for when you're recruiting someone? If there's a kid out there that wants to be a D1 recruit and they want you looking for them, what is it that you look for in recruits?
You know what? We look for, kind of to preface what you were saying, recruiting is 100% the lifeline of your – it's a major part of your program. And that was the first thing we needed to do when we got our feet in the ground and Madison, was to hit the ground recruiting and make sure we were hitting the entire state of Wisconsin, being accessible to any high school coach in the area. But like I said, it was no longer being able just to recruit our geographic area and the surrounding states. I mean, that W, you would be surprised how far it reaches. And it really gets the door open, and you're able to get them to the university. You're able to get them on campus. And once you get them on campus, man, that's where you're able to show your personality and show your team. And I think that's half the battle, right? Someone from, the East Coast or the West Coast doesn't necessarily want to come to the Midwest if they're, it was just hard for where we were at in our previous university.
Right.
Being able to bring a kid from the East Coast or the West Coast, when they hear Wisconsin, they're like, sure, absolutely. I'd love to come check it out. Because that badge or that W is worldwide. But what we look for in recruits, I think that's a loaded question. But I think there's things that we certainly look for as far as, guys that love to compete, guys that, like I said, are willing to sacrifice and willing to do whatever it takes to be the best version of themselves. But not only that, we want good students, right? At the end of the day, we are student athletes. We want guys that are going to graduate when they're done. And if I have any advice for kids that are younger and are looking to be recruited by the University of Wisconsin or any Big Ten program or any program in the country, make sure you're taking care of your academics, right? Make sure that you do not let academics dictate your future, right? Don't let your academics bring in an obstacle because you got a little bit lazy in the classroom, and now opportunities start to go out the door, because we see it all the time, right? There's great talent that gets swept under and gets lost because the academics don't meet up with the criteria that it takes to get into the university. So certainly I think academics is a big part of it, but you want those tangibles of guys that love to compete, guys that love to just live that right lifestyle. It's nothing rocket science. But we look for that.
I think sometimes people forget the basics, right? Academics, grinding it out, working hard. Like sometimes people think it's some magic formula. That's kind of why I didn't set you up for that question, but it's one of the reasons I posed it that way is because I know kids are wondering, like, how can I get recruited by a D1 program? And the answer is not some crazy algorithm. It's put your academics first, work hard, be willing to do everything. Like, it's those basics. I know it from business. What's helped me win in business is doing the basics, being diligent, being on time. I love the poster. We put out a graphic at Scrap Life like last year with Taylor, and it was like 10 things you can always do no matter what. And it's like, I don't remember them all, but it was like being on time, control your attitude, put in max effort, like all those things, and it's so overlooked.
Amen. Absolutely.
So, speaking of Wisconsin and the Badgers, it's obviously a big weekend, Big Ten weekend. There's so much to focus on. What are you most excited for this weekend?
I'm driving, like I said, from the Jersey States right now, so I can't wait to get back with the team, and we are fired up. I think this is the healthiest our guys have been. We're excited. We're fired up. We're focused. Like I said, this is the time of year you see competitors start to rise, and you start to see guys, they start tripling down. And this is the time that you want to be healthy. This is the time you want to be focused. And I believe that's where we're at. So I'm excited. Conference tournament. Last year was my first Big Ten tournament experiencing that. It was great. The energy is unbelievable. The Big Ten tournament is tough. I think it's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, it's my first time going to a Big Ten tournament. I'm absolutely pumped. And I know a lot of people are pumped for the 133, which everybody can understand why. What are your thoughts on Seth Gross for this weekend?
I think it's great. I think Seth Gross is going to put himself in a great position to win his first Big Ten title. Just because I see the guy every single day, and I see what, like I keep going back to the word, the willingness to do whatever it takes. This guy is willing to do whatever it takes, and just his commitment to doing the things right every day. I think he is at a place right now where he's really, really hungry, and I think the more that these guys wrestle him, a lot of people say that it's gonna be a better match the next time they wrestle Gross. It's not like that. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy figures guys out quickly. He makes adjustments very, very well, and I'm excited for him. I think he's really ready to go, and he's focused. He's got a lot of energy. He's happy, and we're excited for him.
And he's smart. Like, he's a smart kid. I know him pretty well, and I know Bono was telling me when I had him on the podcast, like, right after, I don't know if it was, I think it was the DeSanto match, like, right after, it's like, okay, this is what I got to do. I got to work on this, and I got to work on that. And I'm curious, like, is that the general sense of how things go at Wisconsin? Are a lot of kids like that, like wanting to, like Trent Hilger has a tough weekend, right? With so many guys in that loaded heavyweight bracket. Is there's that same mentality from other guys too? Like, I want to get right to work on these things, and I want to do whatever it takes.
Absolutely, these guys are ready, and like I said, you can tell, and you can sit back and you can see the guys that are excited for this opportunity and grateful for the opportunity to go out there and showcase their skills. These guys look forward to competing. They're looking to have some fun this weekend, and like you said, Trent Hilger especially too. He's got a great tournament. But we're looking for 10 guys to go out there and go get a spot to the NCAA tournament.
You know, one last question too. When it comes to a coach, because I ask the athletes all the time, and as an athlete, you'll probably understand this question too. You know, I'm always curious on expectation. Like, guys come into college and they have this expectation, like, I'm going to be a 4-time national champ. And when it doesn't happen for most guys, you have to reset and say, okay, I didn't do this, time for the next goal. As a coach, what's your expectation for your athletes where, regardless what happens, you know, sometimes you can't be satisfied based on a win or a loss. What is it for you where your expectation is met if something happens?
You know what? I believe in all 10 of our guys, but our expectation every time they step foot on that mat is to give us your best hustle, effort, and attitude. And that's with every single guy. And when the match ends, it is what it is, right? We'll live with the results. But if you've let anything hang on the table, then obviously we're not giving our best effort, right? And we've got to be able to adjust that. So when we got 10 guys that are giving their best hustle effort and attitude, we're going to be happy. So we're excited. We're at a great place right now, and I think those are our expectations. Those are realistic expectations, and we want 10 guys going to the NCAA tournament because ultimately the goal is to get to the NCAA tournament and then go make some noise. Right? If we can get 10 guys to the NCAA tournament, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'll tell you this, too. A lot of guys, you know, when they come out of high school, I think the expectations are, you know, being able to come in and be instantly, you know, compete with the top guys in the room. And I love the attitude, but you got to be able to, you know, the lows can't get too low, right? When you're a young guy, you got to stay diligent and doing the right things and making sure you're working on the necessary things to keep coming along. And I think that first year in college is very important to build that foundation. And it's important for young guys to have the leadership of the older guys to show them the way.
As an athlete, how did you manage those highs and lows? Like, that's another thing I ask a lot on the show is, like, you know, wrestling is such an intense sport. Like, my wife is starting to get it because when I'm watching some of these matches and guys that I care about, you get so invested. And I can't imagine as an athlete how invested you get with the highs and the lows in the sport. How do you balance that? And if somebody's listening right now who has an issue with, you know, dealing with depression or the highs and the lows of the sport, like, how did you deal with that?
Man, you know what? It was difficult at first because you want to win so bad. You want the results to be there. You know, you think that, you know, the results should be instantaneous and you should see instant results because you worked hard, right? Well, you're not guaranteed anything, right? You're not guaranteed anything, but you are guaranteed that if you put your best effort, your best, you put your best foot forward, that the best result may happen, right? So I think just being able to reset, I was lucky enough to have a lot of great support system around me, and being able to experience those things through my own career, because I can tell you I've had a lot more lows than I've had highs. But it was being able to hit that reset button and say, listen, what's happened in the past is happened. Now, how do we make the correct adjustments and push forward? Because how I handle it from here on determines everything, right? I can't let that baggage walk with me. I got to be able to let it go make the adjustments and push forward, because I'm a prime example of that. My junior year, I don't remember what I was seeded, but I lost first round in the NCAA tournament, right? I was that guy that, on the NCAA or on the I think Sandy or whoever the announcer was like, oh, big time upset first round. John Reeder goes down in the first round, right? I was that guy,
Yep.
And there's a lot of other things that you could have done. You could have just packed it in and said, I'm going home, right? But it was, how do you make the adjustments pushing forward? Ultimately didn't get the goal of being an All-American my junior year. I had a lot of different complications that played into it. But that summer, I truly think that I figured out a lot about myself, because I really had to dig down deep, man. It was a dark time right after the NCAA tournament that it was touch and go there for a minute, because, your dreams of being that NCAA champ, it was crushed, right? And I'll never forget the talks that I had with Coach Bono, and just the amount of time that he helped me build myself back up. That I'll always be grateful for what he has done for me. And I believe that, he was a big reason why I won a national title my senior year. He built me back up to where I believed in myself. And my senior year, man, I was rocking. And I believed that when I stepped on the mat, there was nobody that could hang with me. And it was a fun year, because I let it all hang out there. It was my last go around. And I think your mentality is such an important aspect of being an elite athlete. And the more I'm a coach, I see it, because each individual is so different. And being able to master your own mind, you got 10 different starters, and each of them think a different way, right? Each of them is battling their own demons before they walk out of the mat. And how do you get them to fully be confident in themselves before they walk out of the mat? Now, that's a tricky question, right? You got to be able to maneuver through that and figure out what triggers them to be an elite, perform at a high level. But man, I'll tell you what, the more I'm around this level of coaching, I think that the mental side of things is so important. It's not just the nutrition and the amount of time you spend in the weight room or in the wrestling room. Certainly all of them are very, very important, but I think that mental aspect of it as well is such a huge component. And I think that is a lot of people don't understand that.
No, they don't. And I just had Jaden Cox on this podcast who talked about, mental health struggles and things you've gone through. And I'm curious, this is very timely, the fact that we're having this conversation in early March before NCAAs, where, I got to be honest, like, I've gotten so many good relationships with these wrestlers that heading into NCAAs and Olympic trials especially, I'm so excited, but I'm also like nervous, because I have friends who their dreams are going to come true, and I have friends whose hearts are going to be shattered. And, you're going to see a lot of hearts shattered and dreams kind of either delayed or shattered at NCAAs. If there's somebody listening who has that case, if let's say they're listening to this in April, they had an extreme disappointing NCAA tournament or maybe a high school postseason tournament, like you lost a huge upset your junior year and then you rebounded and you were undefeated your senior year and capped it with a national championship, what would you suggest they do?
Man, you know what? I would just keep it as simple as I possibly could and keep it very, very, I want to say tight, but everything was so, it was in the moment, right? I was living for the moment, for that moment, right? I was never thinking about what had happened prior, and I was never thinking about what was going to come. I was always living in the moment, and I think that was a big part of why I felt like I was stress-free, right? When you're carrying that baggage from what had happened in previous rounds or in previous years, or, maybe will it happen to me again? Or, oh man, I might have Johnny in the fourth round or XYZ, right? If you keep it to that simple, let me, keep your feet on the ground, be where your feet are, if that makes sense. That was something that helped me a ton. And I think it was Bono just continually telling me, saying, listen, focus on what we're doing right now. Focus on who you got now. Don't keep it it's as simple as what you do in practice. You're trained to wrestle, I don't know, 45 minutes every day in practice, and you're going out and wrestling a 7-minute match. This is nothing, right? Go out there, execute our game plan. Something that Coach Douglas, it goes back to Coach Douglas, and Coach Bono had me do this as one of his athletes was, and Coach Sanderson did the same thing. I would write down my game plan on a flashcard, right? And it got as simple as that, and I would carry that with me. I would have it in my bathroom. I'd have it in my gym bag. I would walk myself through each 30-second clip, each minute clip. What was I supposed to be doing at a minute 30? Now, obviously, things can adjust on the fly, but I saw the way I wanted to wrestle 1,000 times before it would ever happen, and I would see myself get my hand raised 1,000 times before it ever happened. I saw myself jumping into my coach's arms my senior year, winning a national title 1,000,000 times before it had ever happened, before it was ever going to happen, right?
Yep.
And like I said, bringing back to that mental aspect, it's so powerful, man. It's so powerful, and I think you truly gain a lot of confidence in that when you continually see yourself doing things and you see yourself. The positive affirmations are important.
Yeah, they are, and I don't think there's enough focus on mental, both mental strength and the mental game of it all, so I'm grateful you touched on that. Well, listen, man, I'm going to let you go. I know you got a busy weekend ahead, and selfishly, I'm excited because I'm going to see you tomorrow.
All right. I could talk to you all day, man. I really appreciate it again.
Of course, man. Listen, I'm sure you're going to be on here again. This might be the first, but it's not the last time you'll be on this show. So thank you for making time, and I'll see you tomorrow, man.
All right, Justin, I appreciate it.
And that is today's show. Thank you for tuning in and for listening. Let me know what you thought of today's conversation. Send me a message, tag the show, send me an email, leave a comment, whatever you want to do. But I'm trying to be consistent with the guests that come on while maintaining a good variety for the show. So let me know what you think. And if you're new around here, there's so much more to listen to. Be sure to go back through the archives, listen to the other episodes and conversations that have been published. So be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen, and be notified when new episodes dropped. And if you are interested in apparel or merchandise, go to shop.baschamania.com. And aside from all that, I will see you next time. See ya.
And the beat goes on, it goes on, it goes on, it goes on.